Welcome back, everyone. This is Dirch, and I have another video on Battleborn. This one's kind of a mix of Battleborn and Borderlands commentary. Well, I've got some gameplay in the background. Just so you guys know, I got a group of friends here. We're doing an advanced mode through the second story mission, the Void's Edge, which is one of my favorite missions so far. It's just got a good balance of fun bosses and good mobbing. But the actual point of this video is why Battleborn's got me hyped for Borderlands 3. I've talked about this before in the past in some other videos, but I thought I'd revisit the topic now that Battleborn's actually out. So there is a handful of things I want to touch on, and I'm going to start with another topic of this I've addressed before, but now it's really confirmed in my mind, is different physics on characters. This is something I really love, and it's something I don't know if I said really bugs me with Borderlands, but something that I didn't like in Borderlands is all the characters in Borderlands were kind of the same physics except for Krieg, who had a higher weight to him, so he didn't have the same knockback. But in Battleborn, I really love that all the characters kind of move differently, they jump differently, they have different mobility. And that should be a thing. You know, the fact that, like, Sal and Krieg move the same, I don't think is a good thing. Now, I don't want this to knock on Borderlands too bad. Obviously, I love that game to death. I put beyond, I don't know how many hours, but thousands of hours into Borderlands 2. Probably close to 1,000 hours in the pre-sequel, and, you know, hundreds of hours in Borderlands 1. So Borderlands really kind of, I think, took character progression and first-person shooters to a new level. Because back when Borderlands came out, most shooters were pretty generic characters. And still to this day, few games do it like Borderlands did. Like, even Destiny, that's got some character customization, doesn't do it nearly like Borderlands does. And a big part of that is not only the skill trees, but the characters being characters and not just like this blank slate you fill out. You know, that's something I love about it. And Battleborn takes this to a new level. The characters here are so alive, so vivid, and so unique to each other. You know, I don't have a Montana footage in this video, but I released a video earlier this week or late last week of me playing Montana. And you can just see such a massive difference in the way Montana moves from Thorn. And I hope they bring this to Borderlands 3. Because it really kind of makes the characters way more unique and just more interesting to me. I couldn't get to Cal here to revive him because he was just too deep in it. I don't know how I got up there. Oh, I got a level. But back on topic. So yeah, the character movement is a massive deal to me, and I really, really hope they bring that into the next Borderlands game, because it just makes sense to me. All these characters really shouldn't move the same. The next is skill trees. So, Battleborn skill trees are not really spiked. They're not as good as Borderlands 2. They're more focused on just game changers and like the big skills, and you have to do that in PvP. But I like kind of that game changer focus. The pre-sequel kind of moved in that direction. Borderlands 2 didn't have a lot of game changers. Borderlands 1 didn't have any. And the pre-sequel really amped that up. So I'm hoping they add to that. The additional mutators is something cool too. So normally you have your skill tree you can level up to, but then like as you kind of customize your character, you get different options. And some people, if it's just in BL3, they like add additional skill trees or purchasable skill trees or something. But I hope they do something similar to like the additional mutators you gain in this game, because I think that just adds a little bit more variety, and the more varied they can make all these characters and the options, the better, because no one right now does that like Gearbox. You know, like I said, Destiny tried, The Division kind of tried with some skill stuff, but they've all failed to match what Borderlands does with characters. You know, Overwatch has got a bunch of cool characters, but they're always the same. And one of the best things about like your Borderlands characters, I'm going to use Zero for an example because I think he excelled at this the best. He could be the best sniper in the game and the best melee character in the game depending how you spec him. And that's really, really awesome that you can not only take a character you kind of find and relate to, maybe not relate, but just a character that works well with you and is fun for you and just clicks with you, and really make them your own through the choices you make of the skill tree. And Battleborn and Borderlands both do that great. And I think just 25 characters, soon to be 30, that Gearbox is going to learn a lot about making these different characters. You know, Marquis, as you just saw run up here, is a real sniper, dedicated sniper, and hilarious and awesome. Thorn is more of like a hybrid, skirmishing, somewhat sniper. But then in this party, you have more of your dedicated healers and dedicated tanks, kind of the shield givers, I guess, the shield supports like Reyna and Cleese, and just the characters are more diverse, and a lot of them are humanoid, but they're not flat out just humans like in Borderlands. A lot of people wanted more alienish creatures in Borderlands as playable characters. You know, it's a sci-fi kind of comic fantasy post-apocalyptic game, but all your characters are just kind of people, other than I guess Claptrap, who's, you know, a little robot. You know, in this game we have elves, as I'm here. You have a sun goddess. You have robots and cyborgs and dwarves and thralls and mechs and just all these different, really varied character types. I'm trying to get to them here, but it's not easy. And this is something I hope they expand on in Borderlands. Is just embrace the sci-fi of it a little bit more. I think that would be a good move. Maybe it's a little bit too late in that franchise to go in that way, because they've already made, you know, everyone you meet so humanoid and just regular humans. But I hope they look into that at least and see how far they can go there. You know, bring back the wereskags, maybe. That'd be cool. But that's, you know, that's kind of character movement, character skill tree. Those go together. Next is mobbing. I wasn't a big boss fighter in Borderlands. I didn't get that much out of those. I did some videos on that. I just loved the actual combat flow. But in the pre-sequel, I've talked about it already with some Battleborn stuff, and I'm going to repeat it now because it's pertinent to this video, that the mobbing, especially in the pre-sequel, got so light, and it just wasn't dense enough, and that really hurt it. In this game, although there's some pacing issues right here, as you see, so some dialogue, they've got to fix some of those, the mobbing is quite dense. As this door opens, you're going to see a ridiculous amount of enemies pop through. And it's freaking fantastic. I mean, just look at all that. So many enemies. This is great. But also, in these stories, all these levels are truly diverse in how you have to play them. Again, love Borderlands so much, but the game was mostly kind of the same thing. Like, there was different environments and stuff and different missions, and it was really great, but it wasn't that varied. Like, in this one, right here, we go to an escort mission on this part of it. And other missions, you're just kind of, you know, horde modes or kind of mob boss, and there's objectives on the maps you kind of got to get hit, and kind of secret doors you got to open, and I don't know, there's just more mechanics within the story mode that I hope they kind of embrace in Borderlands, because I really like this kind of stuff. It just makes it all a little bit more fresh, I guess, is a good way to put it. And Borderlands kind of lived off of the dialogue and just the feel of the game. In Borderlands 1, they were criticized for just brown, brown, brown. And Borderlands 2, like, okay, we had varied environments. So you start off in the snow, like, we never saw snow in Borderlands 2. Then you go to more greener areas, and then you go to these other areas. But it's just the way the areas look. The areas didn't really play differently. And by introducing this kind of stuff into the game, the areas not only look different, but they play different. And that's the more important part. I could give a rat's ass what maps look like. I mean, I do appreciate good art and stuff, but to me, playing different is more important than looking different. And that is a very good key that they've done really well in this game so far. And I guess you have to do that when you only have, 8 missions or so. But I hope they kind of bring that thought process into the future Borderlands game from this and really get true variation among maps and not just kind of different spawns and a little bit different looking places, but most of the maps kind of play the same. The next part of it is the boss fights. Boss fights in this game, I think, are way better than we saw in the Borderlands franchise so far. Going to Borderlands 2, you had, I guess you start off with Knuckle Dragger, and Knuckle Dragger is about as boring as a boss as you can get. He's just a bully mong with more health. Nothing to see there. And then you go on to Captain Flint, who's got his fire phase, so he's got a phase, but he's not really that interesting of a boss. He just has a little bit more health and an immunity phase, and that's about it. After that was Wilhelm, again, just kind of a pile of health that you shoot down with no real mechanics. I guess he spawns, constructs stuff the longer you let him out, but he usually dies pretty fast. And this is kind of how the boss fights are going in Borderlands 2. And, eventually you get to, like, the warrior, who's kind of got phases, but the phases aren't any different. He just goes in the lava when you hurt him enough and then comes back out. It's not all that interesting. In this game, so far, the bosses we've seen, actually have phases. They have a lot more minions. So the fights are busier and more intense. You've actually got to interact with the the mechanics of the boss fights, or you will lose. Or it'll just take forever. The shields on the Conservator in this map, for example. You have to deal with them. And then in the middle of it, you get warped out to this kind of space fight, which is cool. And then you go back in, and it just makes them a little more entertaining than just a mountain of health that you can kill in 2 shots. The bosses in this game, you can't just 2-shot or 1-shot. And that's a good thing for gameplay. I mean, it's kind of sad that you can kill the bosses that fast. The Sentinel was a good move towards good boss design in Borderlands, I think. It's just it was a bad idea to reuse the Sentinel as a raid boss, and that kind of ruined the Sentinel for people. Because other than that, the Sentinel was a really good fight. Minus the fact that they didn't give it a crit spot in the first phase. I thought that was pretty dumb. So yeah, this game really just, I don't know, it has so much promise, and it's doing so many things well. The third part about these is buildables. I love these buildables. They're so cool. It kind of gives that currency a new thing. And I'm not saying like Borderlands needs to become Battleborn, because I want them to exist differently, but you'd have to be naive to think one thing a company makes doesn't influence another. What they learn from Borderlands really helped them make Battleborn, and what they're learning from Battleborn is going to really help them make the next Borderlands, and vice versa. And that's part of the reason I was so excited for Battleborn. Even before I played it, before I really knew if I was going to love it or not, I was excited about it because it was a fresh thing that Gearbox was doing, but it was similar enough where it's relatable. And it was cool to kind of see how this is going to affect their future games. And sometimes you got to take a step back and take a fresh look at things to do good things. Forced art is bad art. I talked about that in one of my videos when I was talking about my hopes for Borderlands 3 and stuff. But I really hope they take a lot from this story campaign, but keep it where it's more of your long, sprawling RPG-ish story in Borderlands. I don't want it to be like quick missions and resettable like this. I want it to be Borderlands. I just don't want it to be... Yeah, this is bad. We both went down. I don't want them to ignore all the good things they're doing in this game, because after playing this game for a few days, I know it's new and, Borderlands is old at this point, but it just feels... I was reviving him, and the button didn't go, and I had to let go and try it again, and it was too late. But I don't know, it just feels so fresh and new, and it is fresh and new, but not all games always feel like that. A lot of games feel old and recycled, and this does not. And I'm just really excited, to play this game because it's fucking cool, but excited to see where they go with this in regards to Borderlands 3. And I think it's going to influence them in so many good ways. Again, right here, you have to, protect him as all this stuff is coming at you. There's a ton of things on screen. I mean, the pre-sequel, we never got to see all this. The next thing I would like them to do is just more characters. Borderlands 1, you started off with 4 characters. There's no DLC. Borderlands 2, you started off with 4. You got 2 additional DLC. And the same thing with the pre-sequel. I hope they stop that and start doing more characters from the start. I would like to start off with, 6 to 10 characters. I don't expect the full 25 like Battleborn. That's too much to ask for with Borderlands loot system, I think. But it would be nice to get, a roster of maybe 6 starting, 4 DLC, up to like 10 different characters, just to increase the variation of it. Then there is, I guess, back to some story mode stuff. Borderlands has an issue with replaying the story 3 times. You have normal mode, true Vault Hunter mode, ultimate Vault Hunter mode. And Battleborn has this too. You only have 8 missions. You're going to be replaying them a lot. But what's cool here is, since all the missions are themed, I already kind of talked about that, you can just go in and pick a mission to do. And sure, in Borderlands, you can kind of just warp to wherever you mob through that, but it's just mobbing through it. You don't get the full mission again. So this kind of has resettable missions. And I think that would be a better way to do Borderlands, or some kind of hybrid like that, rather than forcing the campaign 3 times per character at least, if not more. Because that can get taxing. And I hope they work a right way around it. Not saying do this exactly, but some kind of hybrid where you can kind of reset or redo certain missions, but you don't have to rerun the entire campaign to level up. Maybe have some horde modes or some events or something that helps just kind of vary it a bit more, and not just, I've done this again, and again, because that gets old. And that's kind of a well-known issue and something a lot of people have talked about. And, it doesn't have to be exactly this, like I just said. Just kind of tweak it and fix it. So that's all I have for, things I want them to bring into Borderlands from Battleborn. I know that's a decent amount. Now, some things I don't want to do. I don't want to see PvP in Borderlands. I would be fine if they just took away duels altogether. One of the things I love about Borderlands is like the big, massive skill trees and the massive, the differences from the skill trees and the crazy gear combinations, all these things that you can do in Borderlands that PvP stops you from doing. Whenever you do PvP, you are limited. And I don't want them to be limited by things like that. We just get so close to losing Wolf there. Yeah, I don't want to see that hard limit be put on the game just so they can include PvP. I'd rather just keep it straight PvE and really embrace that. Next would be server. So this game you have to be online at all times, even playing single mode story. And I would much, much rather Borderlands stay offline, because it's been like that from the start, and a lot of people really like that, and that allows certain things that you can't do in a server-based game, which is I think it's good for Borderlands. So I hope they keep that part of it. I hope they keep it offline optional and not strictly an online game. That can't be it. I mean, I kind of sounded harsh on Borderlands in this, and it wasn't meant to be harsh on Borderlands, but the topic of the video is what I want them to add. It was about my issues with Borderlands as a franchise. Currently, Borderlands is my favorite franchise of all time with video games. So I just want to say that. I didn't want to come off as negative towards it. I absolutely love it. But, yeah, there are certain things that aren't the best in it, and Gearbox has already shown in this game that they learned a lot from a lot of those. So I just thought it was worth taking the time to talk about those, because they're a thing. God, I love the animations in this too. This game is just so beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. But art is subjective, and not everyone loves it. Some people would rather see like your kind of hyper realistic looking games, and that's something they are going to keep. And that's not really this or that. Borderlands and Battleborn here have a different looking style. I don't think they look the same. They're just both animated. But that's all I really have for this. So thanks for watching, everyone. I guess I'll leave this video on through the boss fight so you guys can finish it. Although I'm going to have the audio off on this because we were doing a lot of shit talking and arguing and stuff like that I don't really want to put on YouTube. You guys, not that I don't do that, but sometimes some things are better left not put on. So the audio is going to be off here, but if you guys want to finish up and watch the boss fight since I was talking about them, I encourage you to do that. If not, I will see you later, and thanks for watching. Bye.